All right, my name is Wes Rubalcaba, and this is the Drupal 8 theming crash course. So this is going to be a what has happened, not necessarily so much why or like, you know, the really cool ins and outs. If you want to know that, which is definitely worth knowing, definitely check out Morten DK's session, which is coming up at 3 today. I don't remember which room, but I will definitely be there because Morten is much smarter than me and helped implement this stuff. I just tried to use it a couple times and wrote down a presentation. Actually, I copied most of this from him and Kotzer, so big thanks to them. So, my name is Wes Rubalcaba. I'm a front-end dev at Lullabot. I've been working there for a year and change. I've been working on Drupal since version 6. I am definitely a markup snob, and I like to write things custom rather than use contrib theme. That definitely goes for any sort of CSS framework or stuff like that. I'm definitely more of a make-it-myself guy. So like I said, I work for Lullabot. We do design, development, and strategy, and we are super fun to work with. You could see this mug every morning on a Hangout if you want. So yeah, check us out. We're good times. Yeah, so what we'll go over today, kind of the new file organization, the core markup, the new class syntax that we have, which I'm super excited about, Twig, which is huge, obviously, the YAML kind of stuff, config, how that works, and much more. Oh, and Morten's here. And if any other person that's smarter than me is here and wants to correct anything that I say, please do. And if there are any questions, feel free to interrupt. I will go with that. All right. So, file organization. Core has its own folder. And this is awesome, because when I want to edit my code, it's so much easier to get to. So it's basically in the root, and you have your modules and themes. You can get in there and put in all the custom stuff that you want, and then now all you have to remember is don't touch the folder that says core on it. Whereas before, when I was new to Drupal and I didn't understand that I couldn't edit stuff that was in the root, and someone yelled at me. All right. Template.php has a new name. It is now your theme name.theme, similar to my module.module. So kind of same thing, but it still has the same function. You're going to put all your hook alters, preprocessors, which Morten will point at you for, and I'll get to that later. Shame everyone. And then your info file now also has a new name. Not too new. We're just adding .YAML to it. So yeah. So CEM syntax, also known as BEM syntax. So typically people call this BEM, which is block element modifier, but block means something specific to Drupal. So we are calling it component element modifier to try and cause less confusion. So kind of the basic rules we have here. We use classes. We don't use IDs. This is a specificity thing and styling. IDs just make it really hard to maintain. When we say CEM, so a component, you could think of as a widget. It's a thing. It's a chunk of markup. Like we talked about, it's the Drupal tabs could be a component, or a block could be a pretty big component, or so that's kind of how you break things down. An element is something inside of a component. So it could be the title, the body, one of the tabs in Drupal tabs, the link inside Drupal tabs. And a modifier is a suffix to either a component or an element that will kind of say, oh, it's this, but it's a little different. This one's highlighted, or this one's active, or this one's, fill in the blank. This one has blue hair. So this is what it looks like. A component, element, or modifier can have multiple words in it, and those will be delimited by dashes. When you have a component, you just write the name of the thing. When you have an element, you write the component that it comes from, then 2 underscores, and then the element name. And this will make a little more sense in a second here. But this, from a glance, lets you know not only it's what the element is, but where it comes from, what it's attached to, which is really, really nice. And then modifiers, instead of 2 underscores, you're putting 2 dashes, and that says this is a modifier. And modifiers always go at the end. So you could have component name dash modifier name, or component name underscore element name. So we're modifying like a title or a body, and the modifier is at the very end with 2 dashes. So the idea is that at a glance, you can know a lot about an element when you're styling it. So here's an example. I purposefully put one of the elements outside of the main component, because this doesn't necessarily denote hierarchy. It just means that when you have an element, it's part of this thing. Generally speaking, the component element will be the outermost, but sometimes you write all the code, and then like a year later, you're like, oh, I need a wrapper on this. Shoot. Well, I'm not going to change all my classes. That's lame. So this is kind of what it looks like. So this is just a menu. So you can see nav.menu, that's the component. And then we have menu list item, menu link active, so on and so forth. And, oh, I forgot to mention, if you go to my Twitter, it's WesRUV. The slides are all there. And I wrote them so that you could use them as a reference later. I have all the links, everything's there. And pro tip, if you're using reveal.js, press spacebar, and it'll always go to the next slide, whether it's below or to the right, if you know how that works. So another thing that we're doing in Drupal 8 is adding JS prefixes to classes that are tied specifically to JavaScript. This way you know what classes not to remove, which ones you want to leave so that things work correctly. And then something we do at Lullabot whenever we do a component element modifier kind of CSS architecture is we also have U for utility classes. We generally avoid utility classes, but at the end of the project, sometimes it makes more sense to use a utility class instead of something like a mix-in or an extend or something like that. So putting a U in front of that kind of gives you an idea of, oh, this isn't a component. This is just, you know, we're just trying to clear fix something or whatever it is. It's usually font kind of thing or some like last little touch that needs to go on a lot of random things. So another thing that I am personally extremely excited about in Drupal 8 theming is very lean core markup and styles. So this is a little out of date, but basically I took my theme CSS and I removed it, and everything looks very plain, which I was super excited about. And I did not base my theme off of Classy, so it looks like somebody just wrote a bunch of HTML and didn't bother styling a thing. And I'm like, yes, that is awesome. So there are two core base themes. We have Classy and we have Stable. So Classy is the base theme for 7 and Bartik, and it has the default theming that you're used to seeing from Drupal 7 core. Stable has the very bare minimum of markup and classes so that everything will work. So if you like to, well, I'll get to that in a second. And the other thing about Stable is it will not change after Drupal 8's release. That's why it's called Stable. It's not going, you base your theme on it and it won't break your markup. Both of them will have well-organized files and all the templates from core, so you don't have to go hunting for them. They're all in one place now. So you're starting a new project. What should you use? So if you like theming in Drupal 7 and you thought the kind of markup and classes that it provided helped you out while you were building a site, use Classy. It's there, it's solid, and it will work for you. If you're like me and you want all the control and you're going to sit there and make sure that all your classes are perfect, Stable is probably the guide for you. Or you could have no base theme. So by default, if you do not declare a base theme, you will be given Stable. And that is just to make sure that people don't accidentally do something that I'll get to in a second. Oh, wait. What? I just made a push, and I don't think it made it. Stable's all supposed to be crossed out. So I am actually going to do something real quick. .168. This is what it's come to. .130. And then, what slide was I on? 16.4. Obviously. All right, there we go. They're both crossed out now. All right, I'll make sure to get that updated here in a second. So the downside of this is you're kind of riding a roller coaster. Core markup without Stable could change. Your theme could break. But if you're willing to stay on top of that and you want to keep up with the latest and greatest, you can totally do that. You just have to explicitly say, I do not want a base theme by adding this little line to your theme's info file. So Twig basics. So Twig's been around for a while. It's a ride-along with Symfony, and it is awesome. So this is an example. This is basically block.html.twig. I took out some of the comments and whatever so I could make a slide out of it. But hey, that looks like HTML to me. That doesn't look crazy pants. I don't see caret question mark PHP every other character. I love it. So basically, here's how Twig works. If you want to print something, you put 2 pointy brackets outside of it and put in a variable. If you want to run some code, it's pointy bracket and then a %, and then you can say, like, set a class, run a filter, do some sort of thing, do an if statement. And then comment is pointy bracket and then a hash. Another awesome thing that comes along with Twig is drilling for data became a lot easier. You don't have to shoot random hills and hope oil pops out. So Drupal 7, a kind of example here, stole this from Morton. So you have title, and then you have content, and it's an array, and so you have to do field body. And then my var has a lot of crazy nesting, and there's und0 because why not, and then a safe value, right? So you'll notice underneath I have the Drupal 8 versions, and we're missing und0 from Drupal 8 because we got rid of it. You don't need to have that und0 nonsense, which you probably should have had in your code anyway, but you won't have to worry about that. So that is awesome. You're also going to use dot notation for everything. So if you know that there's a structure that has something inside of it, you don't have to know if it's an array or if it's an object or if it's, I don't know, if there's something new that's going to come out that's not one of those two things. So things aren't always that straightforward. So you have tricksy datas. So you'll have, here's 2 examples. In Drupal 7, they're not that odd. But if you have, you want to use an index that's going to be a variable, or you have something that has a special character in front of it, you can use array notation in Twig, and it's basically the same thing. But it'll allow you to use variables and something that doesn't start with an alpha character, alphabetical character, something. Alpha, probably not numeric character. All right, behind the scenes, this is what's happening. I stole this one from Kotzer and Joel. So behind the scenes, it's checking to see, oh, is this an array key? Is this an object property? Is this some other crazy magic? Is this a method? Blah, blah, blah. So this is the order that things get checked, and where Twig's kind of compiling a template, PHP template for you behind the scenes. This is what's happening. So I think this can be a little confusing if you didn't write the code and you're new to Twig. So when you have dot notation, it could be pulling data, and it could be referring to a function, something that's going to do some logic and then return something depending on what you give it. Easiest way to figure that out is to run a debug statement and see what this thing looks like. And it'll tell you very quickly, oh, this is data, oh, this is a method, or whatever it is. So just be aware. Twig filters. So Twig filters are awesome. They are kind of what they sound like. You make a pipe symbol or refer to a certain filter, which is basically a function, and it's going to return something. So you can filter strings. Drupal has provided a T filter, much like the T function that you're used to. Same deal. So we have 2 pointy brackets because we're about to print something, and we have our string that we just typed in manually, pipe T, and it's going to return that unless somebody translated that string. Same thing, we have clean class is also Drupal. There's also a bunch of stuff from Twig. Length is a good one. It'll tell you how long the string is or how long the array is. There's lots of great stuff. And like I said, you can use this deck, and it has all the links to where all the goodness is. You can also filter a block of text. So if you have a very long string that you're translating for whatever reason, you can use a block with the %, and you type in filter, name of the filter, and then encapsulate it in those 2 filter and filter code blocks. You can also filter arrays. So something that we're doing now, if you remember show and hide, we're not really doing that anymore. Instead, you'll take something and you'll say, I want the node, but without the comments. You can leave those. And so the comments are still there, you just didn't want them for this particular chunk, which I think is a lot better. Because you're not keeping track of some state that's in your mind. Oh, has this been printed? Well, but if I talk to it directly, it will get printed no matter what. And So you can also get the keys of an array. There's a nice filter there, or reverse an array. So this is going to be a countdown instead of increment. Little simple examples there. If else, that looks very simple to me. I love it. So there's a very simple one on the top. If not page, then do stuff. And then if not page, but else if it's a page and it's an awesome page, then I want to do awesome stuff. And otherwise, else, I'm just going to do some other thing. So that's probably the most complicated if statement you're going to usually end up seeing. For loops, very simple. So you have for where you're typing in a bunch of numbers, like I want to do this 10 times. And for, I have an array, or I probably do that in an object, where you have a bunch of users and you want to do something for every single user. So in this case, I'm saying this is user, number, and then we have loop index, which is specific to for, so you can know how many times you've iterated over this, which is awesome. And then you can say user number blah is, Wes. User number 1 is Wes, or whatever it is. Any questions so far? Slow down, speed up? Probably not speed up. All right. YAML stuff. So YAML and beefed up config functionality. So I am loving this. A lot better config and themes, which is going to be really, really helpful. So this is your basic info.yaml file from your theme. So this is from the Drupal 8 docs. So we have a fluffiness theme. It's based on, we didn't get to that yet. It's a theme, so type theme, description that's going to show up in the UI for people who want to know a little more about that. It's a custom package. It's in 8.x. It's not a 7 theme. Libraries we'll talk about in a second. Regions you're very used to seeing. Not much has changed there. So yeah, not too crazy there. But if we want to create a sub-theme, here we go. Base theme, classy. That looks pretty familiar. I think the only thing different is there's not an underscore. Now, there's another file called libraries.yaml. So if you're familiar with the libraries module or hook library, which was not part of the libraries module, it's part of core, this is kind of taking that over. So basically, you can define a library in any theme or module. You give it a name. So in this case, I'm calling it global. This is going to be my theme's global CSS, JavaScript, or whatever. Right now, we're just going to do CSS. So we can give it a nice version there. Like if it's a third-party library, that might be very important to know. Then CSS, this is my theme CSS, and here's all the CSSs that I want to add. And oh, by the way, this one's only added when media is print. So you can do all sorts of cool stuff in there. You can also define libraries that consist of CSS and JavaScript. So here's a quick example. So we have CSS theme, and this is my cuddly slider, not my global library, but it also has cuddly slider JS. But then when I put this on the theme and I did a drush CR, if you type drush CC, it'll give you a very pedantic message saying it's drush CR now, and then you can get angry at it and type that in instead. So I got a console error, and it said, hey, you called jQuery, but it didn't work, because I don't have that. That's because jQuery does not get added to every single page, even if you do not need it. Now it is only added if a library on that page calls it, which is awesome. So you can declare dependency, just like that at the bottom there, and you can say, I need jQuery, which is a library from core. I'm super excited about that. All right, adding libraries to specific pages. So we can do this a couple ways. Libraries often accompany certain markup, so you could, in a certain template file, just say, I'm going to attach this library. This is my cuddly slider markup, so I need to make sure that my cuddly slider CSS and JavaScript is loaded in there. You could also do it using PHP, so whatever kind of behavior you want it only added when such and such happens. You can use the attach method, which you could also do in Drupal 7, but wasn't the most popular way of adding CSS and JavaScript. And, oh, yep, that was it. Breakpoints.yaml is another new file. So if you remember adding the breakpoints module to Drupal 7, going through a UI, which was about as good as I think it could have been. Sure, let's do that. but it was kind of a pain, and I didn't really like using it, but it did something very awesome for me. So now it's breakpoints.yaml, which makes a lot more sense to me, because if I'm going to be doing responsive stuff, I probably know what a media query looks like. So very simple format. We have fluffiness.mobile, so this is a breakpoint for my fluffiness theme. So we give it a label. Media query is no media query. We give it a weight, so that's going to affect the UI, what order these are in. And then we can also give it multipliers, so we need multiple retina, non-retina sizes. And then narrow could be media query, all meaning print or screen, and the min width of 560, so on and so forth. So we're doing mobile first here, which is awesome. And then wide, it's another one. So yeah, and those will load correctly in how you want, and then you can use that in your image styles to make sure, responsive image styles, to make sure things load when you want them to. So, developing on your local. You want to get started, you want to get set up, you want to start writing these awesome Twig codes and whatnots. So, built into core, you can just use dump. Dump is going to give you, like var dump in PHP, a very simple, just spitting out whatever a variable is. So if you do dump with no parameter, it's going to spit out the variables from the preprocessor, essentially. It's going to spit out every variable that's available to the Twig template. But if you want to be more specific, you can put in whatever variable you want, and it'll spit out what that was like when that line came up. But who wants to do that? That's very hard to read. So you can enable devel. And so funny story, I used Drupal 8 for the first time, and I turned on devel, and I was like, okay, KPR variables. And then I went to my home page, and it wouldn't load, and I was like, what's happening? And so I spent like 15 minutes trying to figure out what was happening. I eventually did a curl for my home page and got 850 megs back, but it never actually finished, it just timed out. So don't use KPR, don't use Crumo. You can enable the Kint module, which is a submodule of the Drupal 8 version, and it will prevent that kind of recursive stuff that will spit out data forever, because who needs forever data? Not me. It's going to, I think the way it works is it only goes so deep to avoid recursion, and I believe that's a setting that you can modify somehow, but I've never needed to. So FYI. So then you can use Kint. It'll be much like dump. You don't put anything in there. It'll give you all the variables available for the template. Otherwise, you can put in a specific variable, and it'll spit out whatever that is. You can also set up your Twig developer settings. So the first step is awesome. You can just do that, and you'll be pretty good to go. But if you want the Twig to be recompiled, so basically every time you make a change to a Twig file, you want to see it on the next reload, which isn't performant, but if you're on your development environment, yeah, definitely want that. So in order to do that, you need to uncomment this line in settings.php, which will allow you to use settings.local.php. And then you need to add these two magic lines here that summon a couple wizards and make some stuff happen that I don't understand. And now, whenever you make any change to a Twig file, it'll show up on your next reload. Any questions so far? All right, cool. So when you turn on Twig debug, you're going to see this awesome stuff. I have not looked at Devel Themer since this came around. Oh my God, lifesaver. Because Devel Themer, for me, was often a source of joy and massive headaches. So basically, it says, okay, I'm beginning the theme debug here. This is telling you what's happening with the theme. I'm calling this part of the theme system. So we're calling block. And then it says, oh, here's all the templates that are coming from the suggestion. So this is just default core stuff, I believe. I didn't put anything crazy in here. So it's saying, okay, it could have been this one or this one or this one, and they all have asterisks. But hey, we're using this one. It has an X next to it. We're just using block.html.twig, just the default. And then it says, in case you couldn't read the X, it says, this is exactly where it's coming from. The exact path. You can go there, change it, and you will see an update. And then I ripped out all the HTML here, but it says that we're beginning that markup, and then we end that markup. So that is just perfect, beautiful. So enjoy that. But hey, pro tip, after Drupal 7.33, you can just add that to your settings file and get the same thing. Oh. I've used that a lot. It is amazing. So enjoy that. So now I'm going to get into the weeds. This is probably going to be most useful for people who are going to be theming a lot. So overriding libraries. You're a neurotic person and you don't like how a library was set up. You want to change it, you want to remove it, whatever you want to do. This is new to me, so I don't know too much about it. But if you want to override a library, you can now do it in your themes info file. It's libraries override, and then you can list things. So this little line here replaces an entire library. So it's from core, it's called Drupal.collapse. And I want to point to this library instead of that library, which I've defined somewhere else in my themes info file, or sorry, libraries file. So you can also replace just a single asset. So you can just get the path of that asset from, I believe, Drupal root. Is that correct? This is the path that shows up in, yeah. It used to work that way. I don't know if it still does. I would just look at the path of a file from Drupal root, copy it in there, and then put in what I wanted it to be. So yeah, good times. And then you can remove an asset or an entire library. So this particular string here, libraries override, should only appear once, but I'm just had to break this up into 2 slides. So you can do Drupal dialog and just remove. Wait, did I say this wrong? Replace an asset with another. Oh, this is remove it entirely. Yeah. So you'll just put false there instead of replacing it with a different one. And then same thing for removing an entire library. Instead of suggesting another one, you just say false. So you can also extend a library. So this is a different line here. You'll notice it says libraries extend. So you put in the library that you're trying to extend, and then put in some new stuff that you want to add to it. So these are actually libraries that have been defined. I think they're just called user 1 and user 2. I didn't entirely understand the example. But we're working on the docs for this now. So I'm going to try and get those fixed up this weekend and bug all the appropriate people that know more than me. So also, we still have render arrays, kind of. So for the most part, if you see a render array in kind of the preprocess and above layer, it's going to say something about what theme it's using, and that's going to point to a Twig template, which is awesome. You just look for that Twig template, look for that theme suggestion, and you can overwrite it. But if you see type, that probably, I think almost definitely, means that it's going to be rendered much like a render array from 7. It's going to run through some code. It doesn't have an associated Twig template. And these are usually very small elements, and the only reason we still have these is for performance, because sending stuff to a Twig template can become heavy. So things like a link, form API kind of stuff, like a table or a text field, these kind of things are usually handled in render types. And so I hear that we are trying to get away from using preprocess, and if you do, Morton will point at you and look at you kind of funny or something. Yeah, just like that. And but I think one of the easiest ways I've found so far to modify a render type is to do it in the preprocess layer. Unfortunately, adding indexes to an array in Twig, it's possible, it's weird, I didn't like it. I did this instead. It was easier to grok, or whatever that word is. It was easier just to kind of get immediately, and the code made more sense to me. But Drupal 8 is encouraging you to add classes to the Twig template instead of doing it in preprocess, which I like a lot, because everything else, like in Drupal 7, classes are defined in the preprocess for the wrapper element, and also in the template for anything that is inside of the wrapper. So if you just want to change some classes, you might have to open up a couple files to get there. Whereas in Drupal 8, all of the classes should be in Twig templates, no matter if it's coming from the wrapper or the or an inner element. Another awesome thing about Drupal 8 There are many. All theme suggestions are in one place. You don't have to run around to different preprocessors or whatever and find theme hook suggestions and add something. It is now one hook. It'll kind of tell you where it's coming from and its variables and what the current suggestions are, and then you can modify and add to them however you like. And guess what? Crystal ball, I see less hook form alter in your future, because now you can make a suggestion for what Twig template should be used to render a form. So if you want to add just a little nice piece of like friendly text or some classes or something, you don't need to do a hook form alter and manipulate render arrays as much. You can just suggest a Twig template and then add your stuff in there. So another really important thing that we have in Drupal 8 that is very cool, we have an attributes object. So this is an object in PHP, and it has a lot of cool methods that the people working on Drupal 8 have provided for us that are awesome. So you're going to see these mostly on the outer wrapper of an element. So this might be the outer wrapper for a block template or something like that, and it'll just appear as attributes. So if you want to do something, you want to manipulate that, you want to add a class, remove a class, fill in the blank, there's all sorts of awesome stuff you can do. So adding or removing a class, you simply do .add class and then add your class. If you want to remove a class, same thing. If you want to set any arbitrary attribute, you want to say data-bob and set it to Bob, you can totally do that. You just do set attribute and then pass in the parameters. So I could also set a data attribute for what bundle this entity comes from in that second example. So data-bundle, and I'm setting it to a variable of node.bundle. You can remove any attributes. So if there's something that was added upstream that is making your life miserable, like someone is evil and they started styling an ID because they hate you, you can remove the ID and then do whatever you want. You can also have do logic based on things like, does this element have a certain class? So there's a has class, which could be very useful to make decisions off of in your Twig template. Attribute methods can also be chained. So you can add class hello here and then .remove class, so you can just kind of keep those going if you would like. You're probably not going to, in my experience, I haven't done too much to attributes. They're usually pretty nice and clean because I use stable as my base. Yeah?
Does that get passed through, like, when you're using, like, add class, say you're doing that based on the value of a field, per se?
Yeah.
Does that get passed through, like, the HTML class function ways to clean it up?
So the question is, if I add a class in here, does it get put through the clean class function? I'm actually not sure.
By default, you have it. If you just add a class in like that, where you say, maybe my class is just named hello, so it's just a string, that just gets added to the class object. If you're going to have a class, and let's say you define it by the bundle or some field name, something like that, then you should pipe it with pipe and clean class, clean underscore class. Then that gets always transformed to some class name that's actually right.
Yeah.
So you don't have spaces and stuff.
So I'll repeat that real quick for the recording and anyone who didn't catch it. So it does not, if you add a class, it does not get run through any sort of clean class function. But if you're pulling like a variable like the node bundle, and you want to make sure that all underscores are changed to dashes, or whatever kind of clean class stuff you want, there is a filter in Twig for a clean underscore class that Drupal adds that'll call that same function. So you can say node.bundle pipe clean class and use that as your parameter for the add class function. And in my filter, on the filter slide, it does show clean class. It's one of the examples, which it's really useful. Oh, yep, I kind of mentioned this before. Drupal 8 encourages more classes to be set in Twig. So you're going to find all that stuff in one place. Oh, and there you go, node bundle. So I'm doing node dash dash. So this is a modifier class, and I'm doing clean class. I also did after that, I wanted to do a custom modifier that made sense to me, and that's how I do that. And then so you'll notice that add class will accept an array. So I'm actually adding an array of classes that I wanted to add. And this is a pretty common pattern that you'll see in core Twig templates. And it's very, very user-friendly and nice. So kudos to all the wonderful people who figured all this stuff out. Twig Extends. So I'm not as excited about this. It's a thing that Twig has, and I want to explain it real quick, and I'll explain why I'm not super excited about it necessarily. So basically, in any template, you can define a section that you might want to replace later, or you might want to modify later. So you say, so it uses the word block, which is a little misleading in Drupal land. This is a Twig construct, not a Drupal construct. So I'm calling this block foo, and inside of this little block where I begin my block and end my block, I'm putting in default content. And then in a totally different Twig file, I can say this Twig file extends the cool Twig file. This is the cooler Twig file, though. And I'm going to reuse I'm going to change all this code around it. Oh, wait. Actually, I'm not entirely sure how it works. Anyway, you can change what's inside of that block. You can change it completely to something else. You can do alternate content. Or you can even refer to the parent content that was passed from the template that you're extending. So here's why I'm not super excited about this. This is really valuable when you're building custom applications in Symfony. But in Drupal, we already have all this kind of cool template layer kind of stuff that does a lot of cool stuff for us. So this becomes a lot less necessary. And if we're not using it that much, it might instead become confusing instead of helpful. And it will create drier code. But if it's at the expense of being intuitive, I'm not sure that I'm going to end up using it that much. So just a little warning there. It is something you can totally do. The Twig docs show it off very well. And last I checked, it is only being used in one template in core. It was a block template that had to be exactly like some other block template except for like one tweak. And that's why they ended up using it. Mark Drummond wrote it, and it got merged. So he was very excited.
It's also in text areas.
Huh?
In some of the form text fields, we're also using extend there. But it's kind of like just because we could.
Yeah.
It's not really good design.
Yeah. So more instead, it's in some of the form text fields, but he's also kind of with me. Is like it's maybe not the best design, but yeah, it's not the worst idea. Question.
When you were defining your libraries and you set your core dependency on jQuery, your Drupal.behaviors file, are we separating those out now for a library, or are you just going to move one JavaScript as all behaviors for all libraries?
Can you repeat that one more time? The very end?
So in D7, we're used to putting on Drupal behaviors in one JSON file.
Yeah.
Now if we're to separate those out for a library, or we have multiple files like behavior, or what do you think is the best way to organize it?
Yeah, so what I hear is that Drupal 8 is even cooler at caching. So being more granular about your behaviors might not cause the request hit that you're maybe used to avoiding. So kind of breaking things out into smaller components and modules and more JavaScript files might actually be good. I don't have like a ton of experience doing that. It's just kind of like, oh yeah, this could be okay now. All right. I think in theory, like if I'm not worried about HTTP hits, I do want to break things out more granularly. That's where I want to lean. It's just not necessarily a good idea. And I don't know if I repeated the question. So in Drupal 7, we had behaviors, and we generally had in our theme like one global JavaScript file where we defined a whole bunch of behaviors, and that was fine. But now with libraries, is it a better idea to break them down more granularly and make more libraries? Is that a good? Okay. So yeah, I'm definitely going to try that, and I think it might be better. And especially with like the new, I don't know, Speedy and HTTP something or other, that's going to become an even better idea to kind of become more granular with your CSS and JavaScript and only deliver what you need instead of trying to avoid requests. Other questions? Family recipes, secrets.
So it's basically the idea of trying to get away from preprocess to process functions. Is that move all of that logic back into the Twig template using all the crazy features?
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah. Okay. So the question was: is it is the idea, but there is no process layer now. So I will say that in Drupal 8, if there is, it's hidden, yeah. And from what I hear, we're trying to get away from pre-process layer. And the question was, is the idea now that that goes in Twig? And Morton's like, yeah. And it's a lot simpler. It's a lot neater. It doesn't feel as like so much logic in my template. So I'm definitely digging that a lot. And I'm only using my .theme file a lot less. Like it's my suggestions, and then maybe a couple things that were too much of a headache to do in Twig. Yeah, it definitely feels good. It doesn't seem like it's going to be a hairball to do more in your Twig template.
But it is a mindset change for people. So you use everything in the pre-process, you hide everything there, and then suddenly it's all in a template file, and there's logic. Ooh, I'm a front end, I cannot do logic because why? Don't do logic. So it's kind of, we try to change that parameter. So everything should live inside of your Twig file instead of being hidden all around. So you actually just have it in your home. And it is like it took us a little while to actually get through it in the first couple of actually like, well, you're putting logic in the thing, right? Yes, we're putting logic in that for the last 10 years.
Yeah. So to quickly restate that is just, it's a little bit of a mind shift change, or mindset change, but it is very useful.
So in Drupal 7, you build a custom string function. You can build a custom string function in PHP.
Sure. Sure.
So is there the ability to build a custom function in Twig as well?
Yes. So there is an interface for that. That's kind of over my head, but Drupal core, I can give you the link to that. Drupal core, that's exactly how they do it. There's like Twig Extends class, and then it shows all the functions that Drupal's providing. It's like 5 or 6, and I think some of them are, filter. Yeah, I think they're all filters. So it's plausible. It's totally plausible. I have no idea how to do it, but I'm sure Twig has, the Twig Sensio Lab site has great docs for people who are just using Twig and people who are extending it like you're suggesting. And I didn't repeat the question. It was, can you, in Drupal, add your own Twig functionality using PHP, was the question. Any more questions, thoughts, concerns, world hopes, dreams? All right. Well, hopefully that was useful. All right. Yeah. And my sources, definitely, those are great things to check out. I stole a lot from Kotzer and Morton DK's DrupalCon LA presentations, and definitely check out Morton's again at 3 today. That's going to kind of build on this basic stuff. So